Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Okay, so welcome to the latest episode of Sausage on a Fork, and I am absolutely delighted to say that I have been joined for this episode by none other than John Harris, who played Luke Wind. John, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Thank you.
Not at all, not at all. What we'll do, John, is we'll start this episode the way we start every episode, and if you can tell us how you first got into acting.
I essentially went to an open audition some years ago for The Sound of Music when it sort of opened in London.
Right.
And I thought it was just a sort of turn up and have a go sort of thing. And when I got there, they were only letting people in with an agent, and essentially sort of I went up to this lady and said, "Could I come into the audition with her group?" And she said, "Yeah, come in." And at that particular sort of point, I got one recall, but that was me meeting what would then become an agent, a lady called Stella Greenfield. And so that was kind of my way in, and then through her, I got sort of sent on various auditions and ended up sort of eventually making my way into Grange Hill. But it was a kind of chance. Me chancing my arm as a kind of cheeky kid who turned up an audition, and that was kind of that was my get in there.
Right. And did you get much work before Grange Hill?
No, I did. I was an extra in Grange Hill for one on one of the series, and then the following one I sort of auditioned for a part and got one. I did sort of and have since done sort of lots of sort of amateur stuff and whatnot, but sort of no, that was it. I sort of at one point they made a film of Oliver, and I was on the cast list for that, and then they changed the whole cast list. So no, sort of I dipped my toe into the world of acting with sort of Grange Hill, and kind of and then that was it really, sort of on the kind of the TV stuff. But yeah, and done lots of other stuff since.
Yeah, and so were you a fan of Grange Hill beforehand then?
We kind of grew up in a time where there were like 4 stations on the TV and limited choice. So it was, it was one of those things, wasn't it? That sort of, because of the kind of world in which we live in, there was a time when you came home from school and you watched telly on at that particular point.
Right.
You didn't have that kind of choice of, I'll go on the internet and watch something when I want. So kind of by lack of choice, you became a fan. But I think also sort of, that kind of when I reflect on it, it was, it was maybe one of the kind of early programs that kind of that showed that comprehensive life of the average kids, And I kind of, I was thinking about this earlier about what was on telly prior to that, and I was thinking it was, posh kids in sort of like Just William, and I kind of think about Grange Hill, I kind of think about Murphy's Mob, kind of kids TV showing working class kids. So I kind of, there was an affinity there with me in the program, and that sense of it was an institution that everybody watched. It was the routine that we all lived in at that point.
Yeah. And so you went to audition for Grange Hill, and did you go to audition for the part of Luke?
No. I went over to the BBC and I just recall reading a script, and then after that, sort of my agent told me I got a part, and this was the part. But there wasn't a sense of going for. It was, they were looking for new members of the cast, and I think they must have sort of auditioned a number of people, and then sort of placed people into roles that they thought, as opposed to sort of people specifically them looking out for, right, we need an X character.
Yeah. Okay. So what was it like then, going from seeing it on the telly to then going into this room and all of a sudden you're in the same room as, people that you have seen on the telly, people that you've watched in Grange Hill?
It's surreal. It's surreal. But within a very short while, and I hope you kind of got across this when you sort of met the other cast members, is that they're just nice, normal people. They're I can't think of anybody that had an ego that was beyond being approached, wasn't kind, So beyond the idea of meeting folks that you associated with the program and you only knew the character name, in a very short while you became part of that world. And so initially surreal. I remember, there was a number of times when I'd be going up to White City and I'd be getting in the lift and I'd be thinking, there's Pharrella Benjamin over there, or we'd be at the stuff where we're doing Top of the Pops and Level 42 would walk through. It was surreal. It was crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So you joined Grange Hill in 1985. Well, it went on air 1985, so it would have been 84 when you were recording it for Series 8. And like we said, you played the part of Loop, and Loop was mates with, he was Banksy's best mate, wasn't he? He was Banksy's right-hand man. Yeah. Now, whenever I'm putting an episode of the podcast out, I put picture clues online on social media, and the first person that guesses who the guest is going to be from these pictures gets to ask the next guest a question. So I've got a question from Sammy Hag, and Sammy has asked how it felt being Tim Pos' right-hand man, being Banksy's right-hand man, and what sort of memorable moments have you got sort of offset? Or aren't you allowed to tell me?
No. It was I kind of go back to the, for Tim Pos, it was I think he was new like I was new. It was a time when sort of because of the kind of the way that series was structured, there was the introduction of the new characters, wasn't there? There were a number of different characters that came in from the different schools, and so there wasn't a sense of me in isolation, kind of joining in on my own and being new. There was a whole newness that was going on. There was Tim and myself who came from Brookdale. Then there was Andrew and the other lad from Rodley Bennett. And then there were in that whole series, there were there was a French exchange. So there were various characters coming on, sort of all new. So again, it was easy to fit in. And Tim and I got on really well. I've not seen him for years, but sort of again, just a nice, grounded kid. Yeah. Offset, we just, everyone got on well. It was just like one big happy family. There were. I remember sort of in the final episode that we sort of filmed, which was the final one of the series where they kind of did the school play, and there was John Blundell in it, who was Tim Pos' older brother. He was, I don't know whether you've seen the series, but he came on with the motorbikes in the school play. And I remember seeing him and I remember him from Scum. I remember watching him and Ray Winston, with snooker balls and swearing their heads off on a Betamax video. So that, there were moments there, within the series that I was in, there was Tony Armour Trading. Did you know this?
Yeah.
That's Joan Armour Trading's brother.
Yeah.
So there were lots of times when you kind of, you are touching or coming across figures who previously just kind of meant something on a screen. But we had a good laughs all the time. Nothing really kind of stands out as regards to anything naughty or no, there was lots of stuff whereby sort of there was stuff going on with the young cast members causing sort of trouble up at the BBC before we kind of got there. Right. I heard rumours of that. I dare say, people would have told you about that. But sort of, no, we were, we were nice, sort of cheeky kids, but well behaved.
Right. Okay. So we'll look a bit at Loop's character. So he was called Loop. Now, did you ever know what his real name was?
No.
I think it's never mentioned.
Listen, if anyone has a cross to bear, that was mine. Sort of when I'm a kind of great believer in modesty. Why am I saying this? Is that I don't go around telling people what I've done, but sort of But when people do, but when people sort of do find out, because it's a kind of small world and social media and whatnot, I get stick for that name, and I do for this day, you know. There's part of me that kind of think it's some sick joke that someone had. I don't. There must. There's also part of me that kind of think, you know, is Luke or something like that.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I just don't know. And maybe, you know, it's kind of one of those kind of absurd things where someone was having a laugh. I don't know, but whether someone gave any deeper thought to, or actually his name was Luke, I don't know. I do not know the narrative that lives behind that, but it's bloody scarred me. I tell you that.
Okay, so. As you said there, it was the year of the merger between Grange Hill, Rodney Bennett, and Brookdale. And Loop and Banksy were Brookdale. And I'm not going to say ex-Brookdale because they wouldn't have that. They were ex-Brookdale. They were Brookdale. They weren't Grange Hill. They were Brookdale. And they both weren't happy about it. And the first scene that they're in, they see the Rodney Bennett lads have been throwing mud at the Grange Hill sign. And Loop and Banksy start having a go. And the lads from Rodney Bennett thought that they were both Grange Hill, and Banksy was quick to put them straight on that. And Loop actually said, look, we're going to do more than throw mud at a sign, basically saying, look, we're not going to take this lying down the merger. And the Brookdale lads, as they didn't like that Jackie was going out with Zammo. That was always like the big sort of, the big narrative running throughout the series. It was like, you know, Jackie was Brookdale, Zammo was Grange Hill, and there was always that battle going on because obviously Loop's best mate Banksy obviously fancied Jackie as well, and there was always that love triangle going on. And one of the first times that something happened was Banksy and Loop and another lad dragged Zammo into a room and give him a bit of a going over. You don't actually see that happening. You hear it, but you don't actually see it. And
no.
That was when Zammo came out and had to go with his Grange Hill mates for not helping him out.
Not sticking up.
Yeah.
And you know, Lee McDonald, he's you know, he was a champion boxer. So but no, you know, I've not really sort of thought about that, but sort of there also there's other scenes of fighting on the bus later on in the series. Quite
because there was all that moving between the sites, wasn't there? And you know, because the schools were still using like some of the old buildings and stuff.
Yeah, so it was Greyhound Road up in Fulham, and then there was the sort of internal scenes done up at sort of White City, and then the external ones up at sort of Boreham Wood. Yeah.
So like I say, you know, there was a lot of walking to and from school, from the different schools for lessons, and there's a bit where the lads are walking to the school, and Julian and his mate, who are Rodney Bennett, start taking a shortcut.
Oh, yeah.
And Banksy said to Luke that he couldn't believe anyone would want to be taking a shortcut, wanting to get to school quicker. And Luke said to Julian, I bet you we still get there before you.
Yes.
And Banksy said, what did you say that for? And Luke said, well, we can't have Rodney Bennett beating us to school. So then they end up having a race.
That's right.
Remember that? And they end up.
I do, yeah. And then there's the scene where we kind of get back, and then what was his name? The fellow who played Baxter. He says, "Oh yeah, you might as well use that talent in the games, the cross country team or something like that."
Exactly that. Bullet says to them, you know, as you've just said, there, come and Loop's like, I don't want to be doing that. And Banksy said, "Oh, we've got to get out here because he's told us the time to come on Friday, but he hasn't told us which school to go to. So, so we just won't turn up, and he'll think we've gone the wrong one." And as you mentioned the fight on the bus there, can you remember what the fight on the bus was about?
Oh God. I guess it must have been sort of like big stakes, like who gets on there first, wouldn't it? Or back seat.
That was it. Like that. Yeah, who gets on the back seat?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you know, listen, there are certain things in life you need to fight for, aren't there? Like, you know, the back seats. I'm sure you would have done it. You know, we you know, it's you know, and as a school teacher now, you know that you know that's the back seat is still the one. Is still the one. You know, there are certain things you hold in high regard, and the back seats. Yeah,
you know,
no,
like,
I remember that. Yeah.
Like, I work in a primary school, and whenever we've got a minibus, and whenever we're taking the kids out anywhere, it's always, can we sit on the back? Can we sit on the back? And we're like, look, there's only 40 and there's 17 seats. We don't need to. You don't need to use the back seat. Now, can I ask though, when you were filming a scene like that, especially in such a like close quarters, like on the bus, was there any choreography involved?
Yeah, there would have been. There would have been, but nothing great detail, if I remember rightly. You know, I don't remember any sort of precise blocking of movement, of, you know, like the choreography of a fight scene. You know, and I'm trying to think. I don't recall. I don't recall rehearsing that up. I'm not saying it wasn't, but I don't recall rehearsing the physicality of that scene up at the rehearsal studio either. No, I just think it was, you know, there was a sense of free for all and catching what was happening.
Yeah.
I don't remember the blocking of physical movement for that bit.
Okay. Now you also mentioned the French exchange and loads more kids coming in, but that French exchange, I said this to Tim Pos, it seemed to go on forever. It was it was so long. It was a good few months, like.
Oh yeah. If you know, stretch it out. You know, it's that thing, isn't it, of TV, that sort of its creative license, isn't it? Hey, you know.
Yeah. No, we never saw if there was anyone staying with Loop, but we did see him dancing with a French girl in the party at Julian's house. But can you remember what the girl was called?
No.
Right, so she was called Martha. The girl that Loop had a bit of a dalliance with. And in that storyline was when Loop went with Banksy and Jackie and a few of the others.
Yeah, to visit the old school.
Went off to Brookdale. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and there was and there was the caretaker in that in there, and I can't think of his name. He was this lovely, utterly lovely man. But again, he was one of those kind of people that you go, when you feel that you know someone, because you've seen them on telly. You know, I had an embarrassing moment where I saw Colton Palmer in a petrol station once, and I shouted, I went, "Colton!" and he looked at me, and it was one of those things where, because I'd seen him on the telly, it was almost like it was one of those things. As soon as I spoke, I thought, you complete tool, and but you think you know people, but when you don't, and he was the caretaker was one of those guys that sort of, you know, that if you. That I recognise him from being in things, and it was he was the caretaker that chased us out the old derelict school.
His name is Derek Deadman.
Oh, come on then. So so what's he been in? Because
he's one of them. He turns up in like loads of things. So
that's it.
From what I remember, he was in one of the Harry Potters. Possibly, he was definitely in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He was in that.
Right.
But he's one of them that just turns up. He just turned up in loads and loads of stuff.
Just you know, it'd be the journeyman footballer, wouldn't he? Who's been around of all the clubs, and and still managed to pay off his wages while still probably doing another job.
So he went to Brookdale site, and they got in and had a look round, and Banksy had asked Loop what he thought the school would be turned into. But can you remember what Loop said he thought it would be?
No.
He said it would make a good borstal. Which, going back to your scum reference earlier on.
Yeah. No, it was interesting because, you know, there's a fellow who lives behind me who used to be a French teacher, and in my pidgin French, I still sort of can say certain lines I remember from that day. Sort of, there was one line where they said, "Y-a-t-il quelqu'un? Is anyone there?" You know, I've got 3 boys. I struggle with like their dates of birth, but there's nonsense that I can remember. And certain lines from there that stick in the mind. No use whatsoever to me in my life, but they're in there. They're deep within my mind somewhere. But yes, no, turning it into a ball stall. Right. Okay.
And they ended up in an office, which we think was the caretaker's office.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and they sat around, didn't they?
Yeah, they sat around, and Jean-Paul, the French lad, was smoking as well, like he always seemed to be.
French stereotype, the old
yeah. and then the caretaker, they realised the caretaker was there, and like you say, there's a good old-fashioned Grange chase through classrooms and stuff.
Yes.
In which Faye lost her shoe in that one.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Alison, yeah.
Yeah. It was Loop that said they wouldn't be able to go back there now that they knew someone was still working there. And then Banksy then said he was going to take Loop and Jean-Paul for a drive in his brother's stock car.
Oh, yes.
But he wanted Jackie to go.
Yeah, oh, yes. Yeah, that was the lure, wasn't it? To kind of get her on board.
He wanted Jackie to go, but she wouldn't go. So Sarah Wilkes told Banksy that Jackie'd be more likely to go if there was a girl there. So Banksy took Sarah instead of Loop.
Yeah.
And as we know, there was the big car crash with Jean-Paul and Sarah in it. And Sarah was really badly injured. Right, so it was probably a good thing that Loop never actually went. Now, you also mentioned the play earlier on, Brighton Rock, the school musical. The point of that was to celebrate the three schools coming together.
Yeah, that was the sort of the lane of arms, wasn't it? Yeah. Sort of, we can work together.
Yeah. Now, Loop was involved, but to me, he didn't really seem the type that would have got involved. Do you know what I mean? It was like one of them, because we need all our main characters in this bit, so we'll get them all in. But he just didn't seem the type that would have done it. Now, obviously, Banksy and Zammo were going to be there because of Jackie being involved. And so Loop was obviously there as, again, sort of Banksy's right-hand man in case it ever kicked off, which it did a couple of times. And so that ran through the series. And towards the end, the sets got wrecked.
That's right. Yeah, we wrecked the sets, didn't we?
But at
first, then we put amends to it.
Yeah, at first, it was assumed that it was Gripper and his sister. Because they'd been in nicking stuff in the school.
That's right. Yeah, it was a school full of show rags, wasn't it?
Yeah. But then it became apparent.
Made it more sort of appealing because we all saw ourselves in it, didn't we? Sort of, it's the sort of things that definitely happened in the school I went to.
Yeah.
But no, there was the paint throwing over prior to that, wasn't there?
So it became apparent that it was Loop and Banksy that had done it. But they'd done it in retaliation for Banksy getting suspended when the car crash had happened. So Roland had heard Loop and Banksy talking to Jackie about how they'd wrecked the set. So Roland told Zammo. So everyone went and jumped them. And as you've just said, the white paint got poured over Loop and Banksy. I assume that was all one take.
Oh yes, yeah. Listen, that's not happening again, is it? That's not happening again. No. That was a lovely summer's day. That was. It was. It was also, one of the kind of abiding memories I have of sort of like doing the outdoor stuff was the kind of continual having to stop because of sort of like the sound man going, oh, like there's an aeroplane going over. So I particularly remember that moment there that there was a real sense. So right, no bloody aeroplanes. Okay, let's do it. Yeah, and that was a one take thing.
Yeah. So then Loop was then banned from taking part in the musical.
That's right.
But Loop and Banksy still turned up at the school, claiming that he wants to help. Mr. Smart chased them away. But they went back, and Zammo saw Banksy, and there was a little bit of a scuffle between Zammo and Banksy, and Loop is just stood there watching. Like when this one happened, he just let them get on with it. I've had enough of them too. But then Banksy and Loop genuinely did want to help.
Yeah.
And as you said there, that's when they went and got Banksy's older brother and his mates to bring the motorbikes on. Because, as you say, it was Brighton Rock, but there was the sets didn't show any motorbikes or anything like that. So they got his brother to come on stage with their motorbikes, and the play was hailed a success.
Yeah. It was interesting. I've still, I have nothing from my Grange Hill days physically, but I do have the program from that. And,
do you?
I do. It's like, I had all the scripts. I kept them for years, and then went, you know, I must have kept them for 10 years, and then sort of just like, you know, like we do when we keep things, is that you forever go, oh, do I keep it? Don't I? Do I keep it? Don't I? And there must have been a point where I said, no, I can't be asked, and just sort of got rid of them. But I did have that, and I remember looking down it some years ago, and sort of Lionel Blair. Do you remember Lionel Blair?
Yeah.
He was, you know, bouffant hair dancing, sort of a fella who sort of did sort of give us a clue. His son was in that, and I sort of like, I didn't even know that. And and I met a girlfriend on set, and she was a dancer in that as well. Right. So yeah, it was I still have that program. I think it's the only thing I've kind of got from that particular time.
Apparently, Louis Spence. If you remember Louis Spence, he's in it.
I've got him. He is. You are right. Yeah, Louis. Yeah. I've got. You know, it's an old sort of typewritten copy with sort of the program. Yeah, and his name's on it as well. You're right. Yeah, Louis Spence was on it as well.
There's a couple like who turn up in it later on, like Michelle Gale was in it, and Samantha Lewis was in it, and they got parts later on.
Yes,
but they were there in that bit. So we never saw Loop again after that. But what was the reason for you leaving?
I don't, you know, you get a message to say, hey, listen, thanks for your time. We sort of, we sort of move on. I you know, like if you look at it logically, I think sort of, you know, they brought the school together, and then they kind of filtered out the whole class and sort of just took on the main characters. I think there were numbers that, like myself, that were sort of dropped at the end of that series, and they kind of went through to the next one, which was sort of to Just Say No. So I think there was, I think there were a number of people that sort of, you know, that didn't go on after that one series.
I think there was only sort of from the whole merger. I think there was only
Tim Pos,
Banksy and Jackie. Yeah, so Jackie was there before.
Was it, you know, so all the kind of the two lads from Rodney Bennett. They never came forward. You know, it's a kind of nature of that world, isn't it? Yeah. Is that there are people that get picked up and things change and things move on, don't they?
Yeah. But how did you feel about leaving?
It was a strange one, really, because it was all really, really quite surreal. You know, from kind of obscurity to sort of being on the telly and being stopped on the street and all the other sort of stuff. And then sort of, you know, it was, I think there's part of me that thinks I got something at Christmas, like from, was it a fellow called Ben Rea? I remember getting a postcard from Ben Rea, who I think REA was a producer or a director, and he said, thanks, but we're not sort of continuing. And there was that initial shock, but like with all things, you know, we get knocked back. So what do? You sort of, you know, you pick yourself up and you go on, don't you? And you know, it was, it was. You know, there was a sense of sort of shock and disappointment, as there would be, but sort of there was also a sense of kind of, you know, that I kind of enjoyed the ride, and sort of and in retrospect, when I look back on it, you know, I kind of even the one series that I was in, I was kind of like in a program that was like, I think, you know, I was in something, even though it was only a few episodes, for a short time, but a special part of British culture, and I kind of feel very blessed at that. Like I said previously, I don't go around shouting it out, but sort of, you know, it was a good fun time. Like you would have a good fun time on one of your years in your life. It was one of those fun, strange, extraordinary times for me.
Right, but was it difficult when you saw the following year and the Just Say No and all that happening and properly, like, Granger exploded? It went from being just kids TV to like national news,
social commentary. Like do you know, I watched it, but I was, you know, I was at the time I was 18, so I started. I was 17, 18, so I started working. So that kind of sense of getting home from school and watching it, if you ask me to tell me, if I was asked the question what happened in the series after, I wouldn't know.
Right.
I just wouldn't know. I kind of, did I watch bits of it? I would have, but I sort of, I wasn't that kid at a younger age where sort of my life dictated I was coming home from school at like 4 o'clock and putting on the telly at 5 and watching it. I was, busy getting on with life as opposed to sort of sitting around kind of moping. So, there was there a little part that went, oh God, blimey, would I have liked to have been it? Yes, there was, but sort of, you crack on with things, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned there about like getting stopped in the streets. So what was the public reaction like to you?
Yeah, just generally people being nice. I can't think of too many times when things were negative. There was certain people who were kind of angry at the world that would always look on sort of, to pick like there are in the world, aren't there? When people aren't happy with themselves, they're kind of like looking out to lash out. So, there'd be certain people that would like shout stuff out that would be negative, but largely people were nice, aren't they?
Yeah, cool. Okay. So what happened sort of then after you left Grange Hill? What did you do then?
I when I was in Grange Hill, I was in the sixth form, so I was in like what would be year 12, and I kind of I'm my mum brought me and my two brothers and sister up, so I was like single parent family, traditional sort of London working class lad, and left school without any results, and ended up working in a shop and wearing like expensive clothes, but earning £100 a week. And I was kind of thinking, is this what I want to do? And in short, the kind of I when I was like 19, no, I'd have been about 20. I went back and did my GCSEs at college.
Right. Yeah.
And then ended up doing my A levels and going to university. But sort of, I was kind of that's where kind of my life went down.
Right.
So it was the idea of, beyond that sort of that letdown, it was a cracking on with life and sort of and enjoying being young, like we all were.
So did you step away from acting completely then?
No, I sort of when I was doing my A levels, I sort of got I properly got into acting.
Right.
So sort of did a load of plays at the college I was at, and ended up going on and doing a drama degree. I worked out on kids camp in America and thought I like working with kids. I like doing the drama stuff. And I did a degree in Birmingham for teaching drama in education, and then sort of went into teaching of drama and have been doing that for like 29 years.
Brilliant. Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant. You're still doing that now then, yeah? Brilliant.
Oh, yeah. So sort of like, directing plays and teaching the GCSE and A level. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. And are you still in touch with any of the Grange Hill cast?
Yeah, some of them, in the same way that sort of people are in touch through social media.
Yeah.
So I'll send people like a happy birthday message, and that's that sort of thing. And when we sort of do the reunions, I went along to one a couple of years ago up at sort of can't think of where it was, but that was nice to catch up with them. It's nice. It's nice. So sort of my relationship with those is kind of born out of a year spent together, isn't it? So there isn't a depth of there isn't a depth of relationship, but there is a sense of shared narrative that we were in something special for a given period of time.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Well, John, we are coming towards the end of the interview, and I'm going to ask you the same 5 questions I ask at the end of every episode. And they're all great. They're all Grange Hill related. They're all Grange Hill related, and it's not a quiz. So that's the main thing. Don't worry, you won't have to test your memory banks there. So recently, there's been talk of a Grange Hill movie in the works. What do you think of the idea of a Grange Hill movie?
I mixed feelings, really. Sort of. I think the kind of what would it have to say? What would it have to say now? how can it add to kind of what we've got already?
Yeah.
You know, beyond the nostalgia. I don't know. Mixed feelings. You know, if there has to be more than just a sense of looking back and let's make a movie about the past, doesn't there? So, you know, I guess it would be much more political because the world in which we live in is more political. So I don't, you know, you know, when Grange Hill sort of was kicking off, and as it kind of developed, it started dealing with the bigger issues, didn't it? It dealt with issues of race. It dealt, you know, obviously the drugs thing's the big one. And I just kind of sort of think on, you know, what would the narrative be? You know, what could they possibly do to entice people in to watch a film about a school beyond having a connection with, oh, I remember, you know, I remember that kid who's now playing a parent who was an actor in it.
Yeah.
I just, what would be the hook? What do you think would be the hook?
So what I've heard is they would look at like today's social issues with, you know, dealing with life after lockdown and, you know, cyberbullying and all that stuff. That's what I think it'd be. But there's definitely a nostalgia thing with me towards it.
Yeah,
about it.
I'm just kind of sort of thinking, you know, okay, so it's called Grange Hill, and then what? And then what? Do you know? I don't know. You know, like part of the kind of part of series of be it EastEnders or whatever is a building of relationship over time, isn't there? So I'm kind of thinking, what could they do within a kind of framework of like an hour and a half film? You know, I don't know. I don't know where they would go with that.
Yeah, but if you were asked, would we see a return of Luke Wind?
I don't think I would be asked, but you know, but maybe I don't know. I just don't know. You know, listen, life's all right. Life's all right for me, and
right.
so who knows? But I don't think I would be anyway.
All right, okay. And so you said earlier on about being, you know, you watched Grange Hill as a kid. So other than Luke, who was your favourite character in Grange Hill?
Yeah. Oh God, blimey. I think maybe Terry Sue Pat's character of Benny.
Oh, yeah.
I think there was a kind of lovely tenderness about the character. He was you know, he loved his football, so that kind of sits with me.
Yeah.
And there was a kind of innocence of a kid trying to do well. A kind of, you know, there was a good soul.
Yeah.
And I met Terry Sue Pat a couple of times, and just again, just a nice grounded kid. So yeah, so I'll go with him. A mate of mine, Wayne, black lad, grew up with one of my oldest mates in London. I remember him sort of having a real thing with Terry Sue Pat, and I think he was kind of one of those kind of characters that, you know, as a young black Londoner was kind of like of seeing self on screen is what you know what sort of everyone needs, don't they? That this could be you, and I think sort of it spoke to him in many ways, and I kind of you know, and I kind of picked up on that, and so I'd go with him. Terry Sue Pat.
Okay, and if you couldn't have played Luke, which other character would you have liked to have played?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I just one of the teachers. Let's go with that.
All right, okay.
I'll go with one of the teachers.
Okay, so then the final question. In fact, no, that's not the final question. You've just mentioned football, and I recall seeing Luke with a Chelsea bag. So, is that your team?
It is my team. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Brilliant.
And largely Arsenal, West Ham were there. There was a lad called Jason in it, who was he was one of the extras who did it for years and years and years. Jason. He went to Barbara Speak, and he was one of the other Chelsea fans on set. But there were lots of Arsenal and West Ham fans.
Yeah, that's what I've come across. Like mainly Arsenal and West Ham. A few Spurs.
I sort of. Mark Burdiss was a massive Arsenal fan. Yes, but anyway, so Chelsea's my team.
Brilliant. Okay, so then this is the final question then, John. Why do you think there is still such affection for Grange Hill?
You know, we kicked off here, didn't we, where we spoke about sort of, you know, how it was central to everybody's life at that particular point through that sort of through that lack of choice, that if you wanted to watch something, that's what you watched. You know, it's in depth. I think also we sort of, most of us look back on our youth as a time of like carefree living, and that kind of we associate those kind of being looked after and loved and cared for, most of us, at a time where sort of, you know, we were watching Grange Hill. So by association, it kind of has, it sits in a nice place in, you know, in our worlds, doesn't it? You know, when you kind of grow up and you've got mortgages and all the other hardship and responsibility, it kind of sits in that framework of a time when generally life was all right and carefree, wasn't it? I also kind of think sort of, you know, that it was a time where, you know, normal working class kids were kind of shown on the screen. And I dare say, you know, that if you did a bit of Google research, in the other working class programs that maybe come on before that, but I think that was one of the kind of early ones that was showing sort of, you know, the state sector in a relatively true light. So I kind of think it kind of, you know, most of us went to state schools, and it kind of struck a chord with that world, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on.
Sir.
It's been great talking to you and hearing your experiences. It's been really good. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on. And to anyone that's listening, I'll speak to you next time. Cheers. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.